25 and lab 27. And all those labs are to do with body composition measurements. Okay? Lab 24 is a skin fold lab, so you learn how to take skin folds. I found a really good piece of film that will walk you through that, as well as, because I think sometimes just looking at the pictures, the photographs in the workbook, doesn't always give you a good feeling for what skin folds are like to measure. Okay? And then lab 25 is looking at anthropometric measures of health risk. So it talks about waist to hip ratios, waist circumferences, and that one really, as long as you've got a rough idea of how tall you are, you really just need a tape measure for that one. Okay, so you can do that one at home. And then lab 27, so 25 and 27 you can't do at home. 25 I've got the video to show you. 27 I could not find anything that really gave you a good experience of what taking anthropometric measures with an anthropometer was like. So I'll talk a little bit about that lab and show you the equipment here. So we've talked already a lot in class about the importance of understanding body composition as opposed to just what I weigh when I stand on the scale. And so these labs are giving you some techniques on how to achieve that. Okay? There are several different ways, for example, of measuring your body fat percentage. And I have a little film clip to show you about that. So if I want to measure body fat, the gold standard at the moment is using what they call a DEXA machine, dual X-ray, and I can't remember what the rest of it is. And a DEXA can look at the different tissues in your body. It's quite fascinating. But they're hugely, hugely expensive, big, big pieces of equipment. So unless you go and work at a Research One institute or an NIH research center, something like that, you're unlikely to have access to a DEXA to measure you, your students, your athletes' body fat percentages. So we've got to look at some options that are a little less expensive. Again, if you work at a college or a university, you might have access to underwater weighing. So underwater weighing and what we call a bod pod both work on the concept of the amount of volume that you displace, right? So if it's underwater weighing, it's the amount of volume of water that you displace. And if it's a bod pod, which is like a little egg-shaped machine that you just go and sit in, it's the amount of air that you displace when you sit in the bod pod. And then that volume is put into a fancy equation, Siri equation, and we end up with a calculation of what your body fat percentage might be. Skin folds skin folds use the Siri equation. Skin folds, we can take a 10 or a 7 or a 3 site skin fold. And the idea is that we measure the subcutaneous fat on top of the muscle tissue. Okay? It takes a lot of practice to take good skin fold measurements because it's really hard to judge when you're not pinching the muscle and you've just got the fat. And in my experience, the leaner the person is, so when you're working with your athletes, the harder it is to take the skin fold because they've got so little subcutaneous fat, particularly on their thighs sometimes. Okay? And with the guys on their triceps sometimes. So it takes a lot of practice to do them well. If you can do them well, they're quite quick. The more measurements you take, the more accurate the estimation of the body fat percentage would be. So the 10-fold calculation is more accurate than the 3-fold calculation. The problem with the 10-fold, I mean, if you've got a PE class of 30 or 40 children, and you're going to take 10 skin folds twice at least on each of them, that's going to take you a long, long time. Okay, so that's why the 3-fold one is often the one that is used, a 3 or a 4. Something that's less so it's easier to collect. The other option that we have now that we didn't used to have, not even when I was in my PhD program, is the availability of bioelectrical impedance machines. So originally, to do a bioimpedance measure, you had to go to a lab and be hooked up with electrodes to the computer, and you'd have electrodes on your ankles, electrodes on your wrists, and you'd lie on the couch or the bed or whatever while they ran the electricity through. And then the computer does the calculation and tells you the percentage body fat. Nowadays, though, it's very easy. You just go to Amazon and you can buy a portable bioimpedance monitor. Right? I have one at home. I've got a couple of clips that I've put on Blackboard for you so you can have a look at those. You can buy bioimpedance sensors that are just like a weight scale, you just stand on them. You can buy ones that are just a handhold, or you can buy one that you stand on and you have a hand bar to hold on to as well. I haven't done the reading, I don't know for certain. I would assume that the full body sensor would be a little more accurate than either just the handhold or just the foot. Okay? Bioimpedance, you have to be aware of the fact that it's really important that the person you're going to be measured is well hydrated. All right? You don't want to have done any heavy exercise just before you do the bioimpedance test. You don't want to have had a lot to eat before you do the bioimpedance test. Hydration status is very important for bioimpedance. So because it allows the electrical current to run through. Fat doesn't hold water, right? So you send a very mild electrical current through the body, and the gadget can calculate how much of the body is fat because it didn't carry the signal well, versus how much of it is muscle and other tissues that have a lot more water in them. Okay? So hopefully I've managed to find enough film clips to support your learning and understanding of these labs. Okay? So let's start with the equipment I have, which isn't a lot, but we do have some nice skin fold calipers. So skin fold calipers for lab 24, there's a range of prices for skin fold calipers. The really cheap ones, the level of error is much higher in them. So for example, you can get these little plastic ones, right? And they cost about $15, $20 a piece, and cheap, right? But the level of accuracy is quite poor on these. So would they be good enough for PE class? Probably. Would they be good enough for your athletes? I wouldn't use these on athletes, or if I was a personal trainer, right? I'd want something a little bit better than this. The ones, and they use this brand in the videos that you'll be looking at, and these are used a lot in research, is the Lang skin fold caliper. They're about $250, but they're small, they come in a nice case, easy, portable, easy to carry around, okay? And you'll see on the film, use the lever here, take the skin fold, pinch the skin fold, release the calipers first, and then release the skin fold. Don't pull the calipers off your individual. It hurts, it really stings, okay? Skin folds are not exactly comfortable for the person being measured, so be aware of that. Try not to have freezing cold hands like I always do. And you're literally, I can't show you because you can't do it on your set, well I could show you on my nice fat belly. You literally take the fold and put the caliper on, take the measurement, take the caliper off, and release, okay? You have to do a minimum of 2 measures for each site. Whenever we take any kind of assessment measures, you should always take at least 2. The more you take, the better accuracy your average is going to be. But if you're in a hurry, you've got to take at least 2. You cannot get away with just 1. That's not good practice, okay? The other thing that's really important to think about when you're doing body fat measures is that you have to be consistent in how you're measuring it. So, for example, at the beginning of the semester, you use your skin fold caliper with your students. And during the semester, there's a little bit of extra budget money available that the head of the school gives you, and so you buy a bioimpedance sensor, right? You can't then take the post measures on your students on the bioimpedance. That's got to wait until the following semester, all right? You can't compare measures taken by different types of equipment, right? You also should not use this one at the beginning and then this one at the end, right? If you want to be able to compare the body fat percentages across time, you have to use the same techniques. All right, that's really important. Okay? So what I'd like to do is to try to share this screen and show you where I've put the videos and show you a clip I've got. A gentleman did a comparison of several different techniques for his body fat percentage. It's quite an interesting outcome, okay? So I want to try and do that. We've been having a lot of trouble with sharing the screen this week. I don't think I'm doing anything different to what I did last week, personally, but it doesn't work this week. Okay, so I'm going to share screen. Okay, so can you all see my Blackboard page.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I click to the home page. Did it change for you as well?
Yeah.
Yay! Okay, all right. So down under lab notes, I added a new folder called how-to videos. Okay? In the how-to videos are this first video is about, I think it's about 11 minutes, the one that I chose in the end. And this is a really good, detailed skin fold resource, okay? My plan had been to play that for you. We can have a conversation about that later. Once you've watched the detailed one, there's a very short 3-minute one that has just a couple of other different pieces of information. The problem with the short one is that it assumes that you understand the technique of taking the skin fold, right? The more detailed one, the slightly longer one, gives you a very, very clear description of how you should take hold of the person and shake the muscle out and just grab the fat and then measure the fat, right? So what I really want is that you watch that one first and then you watch the 3-minute one. On the detailed one, if you open up the more information, you know, on the description box, there is a link to a video about a handheld bioimpedance machine. I also included a link to a short video that was filmed at like a health gym, health club type place on how you use a full body sensor. They're not very long at all, those two. So the one I'm hoping we can get to play right now that shows you the comparison of the body fat techniques. Let's give it a go. Okay, hold on, let me pause this. All right. Do you see the YouTube video?
Yes.
You do? Hurrah! So I don't understand. How come this wasn't... I'm losing my bloody mind, I swear. This is insane. Okay, we're good. This is just 7 minutes long. It's really interesting. So let's play this. Let me know if you
We
can't.
all have body fat, and I'm sure that you just not
Uh-oh.
just how fat that.
Sorry, say that again. Because it's in Firefox and not in... So what was the other E though? It wasn't this E that those films opened up in. They were in... Okay. Let me see if I can make this louder. How do I make it louder? I hope you can hear this, guys.
And my floor weight scales show that my body fat fluctuates around 12.8%. But since that percentage can easily change throughout the day, I decided to research the topic and measure my actual body fat percentage using different methods and see how the results compare to each other. Let's see what I learned coming up. Hi, Andre here. Welcome to Practical Health, the channel that provides you with practical tips and tricks that will improve your health and quality of life. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. And be sure to click the notification button to get
Advertising.
notifications of new videos. Let's start with some of the science background that I learned while investigating this topic. We all have body fat, and that's a good thing. Body fat, or scientifically speaking, adipose tissue, is critically important for our health and well-being. Body fat has multiple functions. Number one, surrounds and cushions our vital organs, like the kidneys. Number two, it insulates us against the cold. Number three, it's our fuel tank, a strategic calorie reserve that protects us against starvation, and so on. So, what the minimum level of body fat? The essential level of body fat is about 2-4% for men and about 9-11% for women. A healthy level of body fat is in the range of 6-25% for men and 14-31% for women. Also, body fat has two flavors: subcutaneous fat, which lies directly under the skin, and visceral fat, also known as deep fat. My research shows that there are 6 major techniques for measuring body fat: X-ray, electrical current, skin fold assessment, 3D scan, and body density measurements using either water or air. And they all have different measurement accuracies. First, dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, or DEXA, is probably the most accurate method available today. It uses X-rays with 2 different energy levels to scan the body, and one of them is absorbed more strongly by the fat than the other. Next, the bioelectrical impedance analysis, or BIA, is probably the most convenient method. A small electric current is sent through the body, and since the electrical resistance is different for body fat, muscular tissue, and skeletal tissue, a device can calculate the percentage of body fat. Third, we can measure the various parameters of the human body, such as the thickness of skin folds or the circumference of various body parts, and so calculate the body fat. Fourth is the 3D body scan. This is when a measurement device scans the body and gets a 300-degree body image and calculates the body fat. Fifth, underwater weighing, or hydrostatic weighing. This is a technique for measuring the mass per unit volume, and since the average density of body fat is different from the density of other parts of the body, like muscles and bones, this lets us calculate the body fat. And finally, the last major approach is area displacement plated tomography, or ADP, which uses the same principles as underwater weighing, but is based on air displacement rather than on water immersion. I managed to measure my body fat using the first 3 methods. First, the DEXA scan technique. It took about 7 minutes and informed me that my total body fat is 14.2%. Second, I tried 2 additional devices to conduct a bioelectrical impedance analysis. The multi-point method, which is the most accurate BIA method, using the in-body device, showed 11.1% body fat. And the hand fat loss monitor showed 10.5%. And finally, the last technique, using skin fold calipers, told me that my body fat was 9.2%. So, as you can see, there is 5 percentage points difference in the reading from these 3 methods, and that's quite surprising. Also, as you can see, for me, the most accurate method is using skin fold calipers. Just kidding. So, I'm very lean or an athlete based on my body fat percentage, and that's pretty good. But then I became really curious and wanted to figure out how exactly this fat is distributed across my body. In-body scanning can provide this information. So I found out that 8.6 pounds or 48% of my overall body fat is in my trunk. 5.8 pounds or 32% of my fat is in my legs, 16% in each leg. And the remaining 20% is in my arms. And finally, I wanted to find out the breakdown between the subcutaneous fat and the visceral fat on my body. Fortunately, the DEXA scan can give us that information. And so I have about 1/4 pound of visceral fat or deep fat in there somewhere, while the rest is subcutaneous fat. And that is, as I understand, quite good. So now you know a lot more about me and my fat. If you are interested in tracking your body fat, you might want to try some of the available techniques, like BIA or a DEXA scan or a skin fold assessment, to see the different results you get from different methods. But after that, I suggest you stick to one technique to get consistent results, because it's the dynamics of your regular readings that you should be focusing on. By the way, if you're looking for some good weight scales, I recommend getting those with Wi-Fi connection. That way, they will automatically keep a history of your measurements, and you can review them on your phone or computer. I hope you found this video useful and interesting. Now comes the question of the day. If you had a chance to measure your body fat using different methods, what was the biggest difference between the readings? Please post your answers in the comments below.
All right.
Thank you for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel, share this video, and hit that like button. See you next time. Bye.
Funny. Okay, so I want to come back here for a minute and stop sharing so that I can talk to you a bit more. Okay, so let me turn the light on here. So you can see that the different techniques for measuring body fat percentage have very different error ratings amongst them, okay? By the way, as you'll see in the next bit of video, that technique, that picture of the skin fold was totally wrong. That's not, you don't take a horizontal skin fold anywhere. It's really important that you, A, pick one method and keep to that, and that you, B, have a little bit of flexibility around the number that you're looking for, right? Because of this error. So if I do a skin fold, I could be 3, 4, 5, 6% out, right? So if you say to yourself or client, or the client says to you, or to an athlete, you have to be 15% body fat, and you measure them and they're at 19% body fat, you've got to be a little bit careful how you tackle that, because that could be error, right? Might not be. They might be 22% body fat. So you have to use some judgment, some eyeball as well. I mean, you know that when your body fat is low, I can see the muscles, right? And when my body fat is higher, I can't see the muscles so well, right? So you can use some common sense with these measures. As I said, DEXA is considered the gold standard. He's working with a high-level institute. You know, I've never, my old school, Auburn has a DEXA now, but they didn't have a DEXA when I was there, right? So I've never been in a DEXA. So just to give you that. Also, I thought it was interesting, his ranges of fat percentages for, like, his minimum range for health was lower than our textbook suggests you should go, and his outside range for health, particularly for the female, was quite high. 31%, that's pretty high. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that his ranges were quite a bit different to what we had from the textbook. It's just one of those things about research is, you know, the more you look, the less you realize you know, because people don't agree with each other across different pieces of research or different textbooks. So again, be flexible, right? Okay. The next thing I wanted to show you, so lab 24 is the skin fold. We'll show you the film. Lab 25 is health risk. Use a tape measure, follow the directions very carefully in the workbook, and you'll be looking at waist circumferences and waist to hip ratios. Okay? Now, the interesting thing about those two measures is that you can use those alongside BMI to give you a good picture about health risk for an individual. BMI is a problem. I mentioned that last week because it's only looking at your height and your weight. It doesn't take into account at all anything to do with your body composition. Okay, so very often athletes will come out in high overweight or obese categories on a BMI chart because of the amount of muscle mass they carry, and muscle is so much heavier than fat, right? Also, their bones are denser and bones are heavy. Okay, so BMI as a measure on its own is problematical, and you should never use it just to identify someone as being fat or not, okay? Not even children. It's a risk factor, kind of red warning light kind of idea. But if you combine BMI with waist to hip ratio, now you've got a slightly more accurate picture of the health risk for this individual, okay? So that's lab 25. Remember to read all the background pieces before you get going into the measurements. And then lab 26 we're not doing. Lab 27 looks at taking bone widths, all right? And this is an important idea because it gives you a picture of your skeleton, okay? And again, the skeleton is heavy. So this might help you get a client to set a more reasonable goal for their weight loss, for example, right? If you measure their bone widths and they've got very big bones and they say, oh, I want to be 95 pounds, that's probably not going to happen, right? If you don't measure the bone widths, you can't argue that we need to set a more realistic goal. Am I making some sense? I hope I'm making some sense. So lab 27 uses a piece of equipment called an anthropometer. And this is an anthropometer, all right? So you put these two ends, and again, you can't measure yourself. You have to do this work with a partner, which is why I'm not doing it. I could be showing you a bit more carefully, but we're social distancing here. Ryan can't come that close to me that I can poke him with this. So you would measure like my wrist width, right? Or my knee width, or my ankle width. And on the, it's got like a little, maybe you can see this, as I move this in and out, it's got a little ruler on here. One side has centimeters and one side has inches. So depending on which resource you're using, if you're using an American resource, they'll want you to measure in inches. If we're using a European resource, they'll want it in centimeters. Okay? So I can take different widths using this. One of the widths you have to take is shoulder girth, shoulder width, right? A chromium process to a chromium process. So you can imagine that in previous labs we've had some giggles when we've had very large football players in here, because that ain't going anywhere near their shoulders, right? However, we're lucky to have an old-fashioned, right? People would laugh at this piece of equipment because it's really old-fashioned, but it's cool for the football players because look how wide it goes, right? So I can get most of the athletes in my class a measure between both of these pieces of equipment. Okay? Any questions? So what I would like you to do is to make sure that you read all three of the labs, and I haven't got it up yet. Do lab 25, the waist-hip ratio one. Actually fill that one in, because that one you're going to load into Blackboard as an assignment. I don't have that set up yet, I'm sorry, it's been a very busy week. The other two, just read and understand them, all right? And look at the bits of video that I found. So, the next thing, Chris and Alexis, I need you to give me a decision, because my plan here was to play the 11-minute skin fold film for you to watch, and then let you watch the 3-minute one on your own. Do you want to go ahead with that, or would you prefer to just watch both of them on your own? Oh, and Tyler's here as well. Sorry, Tyler, I didn't know you were there. Yes, Alexis.
Either one works. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I'd watch them right after we finish this collaborate anyway, so.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really mind.
Either of the others have a preference?
It doesn't really matter. Because as she said, I was going to go over it either way. The review, kind of. Same for me.
Okay. So what I would say, it's only 11:40. I would strongly recommend that when we shut the classroom down, you go straight to Blackboard and find that film clip and watch that, and then have a look at the lab in your workbook. Use this time that is technically class time to get that done, because if you put it off, I mean, there's a lot of you missing today, but they're going to have to catch this up, hopefully. I mean, you can choose not to, obviously. That I have no control over that now that you're not here. But I'm hoping that you're all keen enough to learn these methods that you'll take the time. Okay? Anybody got any questions? No? All right, so remember that tomorrow we will be starting a new chapter. Yes. We will be starting a new chapter tomorrow afternoon, okay? We're going to look at anaerobic energy metabolism. Lots of fun. Yay! So I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Have a good afternoon. Enjoy the video clips. And let me know tomorrow what you what you think of the video clips, okay? Because then who knows what's going to happen in the spring. I hope you're all back on campus in the spring, but we just don't know. So if the video clips don't work or aren't interesting, let me know, and then maybe I can change them out. Okay? All right.